Hello. Today I decided to commentate on well, honestly, I've covered pretty much all the Russian cruises at this point. I've recently done the Bedouin Shores and the Chapayev, so why not do the T10 one as well, the Moskva. Now, I made a full commentary on this just during the summer, I think, in July, and I'm still using the same build in that commentary, so if you're wondering what build I'm using, you can find it there. And of course, this ship is, well, it's more of a battleship than a cruiser, really. It's big, it's got massive guns, it's got a huge HP pool, but of course that comes with all its downsides as well, of being detected extremely easily and having such a huge silhouette to shoot at. Now, the game mode is Bastion, which I personally am not a big fan of, and especially on this map, it's all about controlling capture point 2. I consider it extremely important because it gives you so much control of the map, and of course the surveillance stations spotting DDs around and such prevent them from pushing through there if you have control of it, and it's overall very important to control too. So that's of course what I tell them in chat, focus 2. And the Moskva of course comes with the radar, the best version of the Russian radar. So I'm gonna push in and try to help my DDs secure it, because of course radar is such a good counter to any sort of DDs. They have of course already rushed for 2, as expected, because they probably have a DD or 2 who also understands the importance of controlling this part of the map. Now this Iowa of ours already saying that the game is lost because we don't go to the cap he wants to go. So I'll just tell him that if he uses the survivability expert, aka the HP perk, on a battleship, I have some serious issues taking any of his tactical or strategical advice seriously, because that's not exactly the call sign of a player who knows what he's talking about. And here I get pretty badly surprised from the left. I'm of course I'm tunnel visioning under the cap to use my radar. I pop my radar and I am spotting the Fletcher, but I am incapable of actually acting on it because this Minotaur and Moskva managed to make a really good distraction of me. They focus fire on my broadside because, well, considering how I was pushing up, I was of course exposing broadside to that part, and they were faster to the cap than I expected. So I lost a really big chunk of HP, and that's of course something to keep in mind in the future if I have the spawn. I don't think I've actually spawned down here and gone north with the Moskva before, so taught me something new there about how quickly the enemy can actually get to your flank with this spawn. So I lost a good chunk of HP, ultimately about 13k after I used the heal, and of course I lost the heal as well. So a pretty significant drawback, but the biggest drawback there was really the fact that I was unable to shoot at the Fletcher. I hope my team got some serious damage in on him during my radar, because I was myself very distracted by the flanking force that pushed into 1. But ultimately the radar forced the Fletcher out of the cap and enabled our DDs to capture it for us. So I consider this ultimately still a win for the team, but not so much of course a win for me, because, well, losing that much HP this early in the game of course sucks. But hey, I learned something new, so I always consider that a victory. Now the Yamato is fairly isolated, but I really don't want to get into a fight with him right now. I want us to push together up to the north, and I'm kind of leading the charge here, because it's very easy when you have a force like this, very easy for them to become stationary if you decide to stop, because they tend to follow whoever is leading them and so forth, and if you stop, well, they think it's okay for them to stop as well, and then you have them milling about here as we slowly get surrounded both from the north and the south. Of course, lemming training, as it's called, it is actually a working tactic as long as it constantly keeps moving, constantly keeps pushing, and uses its overwhelming firepower against the split up enemy force. In those cases, lemming trains work just fine, but the problem is when the lemming train stops and they start slowly just milling about, not really pushing anywhere, and slowly get surrounded and killed. That's when the lemming train of course fails. So in the hopes of keeping this train moving, I'm continuing pushing north. Hindenburg shows me his broadside, and at this range, even with AP of course, the Moskva's AP is some of the best in the game, might even be one of the best in the game. It might not have the penetrative angles of the American AP, but you can punch through just about anything at any range. In fact, I'm using AP against the Hindenburg and the Mogami. and I can citadel both of them from pretty much max range without any issues. Kagero shows up, so I popped radar here. Well, first of all, I was hoping the Edinburgh that was moving up would come a bit closer, but I still I popped my radar for him, but I ended up spotting both the Kagero and the Fletcher. Kagero up there and Fletcher on my left, so that was ultimately quite good for my team, but honestly I'm not very impressed with my use of the radar there because I miscalculated the distance to the Edinburgh when I used it, and that kind of punished me. I end up eating one torp here as I'm reversing back into the smoke. Again, another not optimal, well, I guess you could call it a bit of bad luck that I happened to stop right as those torps were coming my way. But there can be no excuses. Still ate a torp unnecessary and took a good chunk of damage. Still, I like the position I am in. The Neptune has smoked me up here. Well, he smoked himself up. I'm just lending his smoke, to be fair. But this enables me, of course, to harass their big battleships. Now, Moskva's HE is very, very potent because you have quite a high chance of fire, and of course it's very easy to hit these shells, consistently land these shells on your targets, so you can do a lot of fire and HE damage. Of course, the shells are big enough and that they actually do a nice chunk of damage themselves, so even if you don't get fire, you're still doing a good chunk of damage, unlike much lighter HE shells where you pretty much rely entirely on the fires, and if you don't get any fires then you're not really doing much to the battleship itself. This big caliber of the Moskva ensures that you're both doing fire and HE damage at the same time. The Kurfürst got 2 fires, so he already repaired. I'm hoping to get a 3rd fire on him. Looks like the smoke faded, so I'm going to need to start moving up. The Edinburgh is briefly visible here though, so I instantly switch to AP and start targeting him. His smoke ran out as well. Gonna see if I could maybe nail him as he's bailing. But it looks like he's gonna sail straight away, and I don't see much chances of catching him here. The Kurfürst gets away, which is a bit frustrating to me because well, are those torps actually gonna reach all the way here? No, they ran out. The frustrating thing is of course when the Kurfürst has used his repair, I would very much like to be able to get another fire on him. Since it would stick, it would be unrepairable. But he's gone, so I keep slowly moving up, keeping myself angled. Seeing as they're flanking around the right side though, I don't want to push any more north, because if I go any further north then I'll be shot in the side. So instead I start putting some distance between me and them, so when they push around this island on my right I can actually deal with them. I don't feel many on my team do not seem to be too eager on planning it that far ahead, and they're just pushing north. So yeah, really need to stop them coming around this island, because if they get around this island then what will happen? Exactly what I spoke of earlier will happen to the Lemming train, where it gets surrounded. So instead of being able to use all its firepower, it instead gets surrounded and gets hit from every side, and that's when the Lemming train dies a painful death. Bismarck shows itself. HE on him. Considering how much broadside it gave, AP would have been an option as well, but HE is more consistent and safe damage. Kurfürst is showing himself up. That's of course a bigger threat than the Bismarck is. Also significantly easier to hit. Seeing as this Bismarck is also disengaging, he becomes less of a threat by the minute. Yeah, gonna focus on this guy instead. The Bismarck is fleeing. Gonna start working on the Kurfürst, which is of course the massive threat here. Especially considering he's pretty much full HP as well. Well, the Minotaur, that's what happens when you give broadside in a Minotaur. The Hindenburg gets one good volley and he's dead. I've done that myself in my Hindenburg to multiple Minotaurs. You cannot give broadside to especially the Hindenburg or Moskva. Well, you can't really give to any of the T-10 cruisers. Just giving broadside in that ship is just the end. And I think he tried to smoke up there, but I mean, he's got a Kurfürst and a Bismarck right next to him, so it's pretty obvious. Oh, Minotaur from the south. I was afraid to go any further south. Now, usually, if a Minotaur smokes up and starts harassing you in a Moskva, you can push in and with your radar wreck him. But considering there's a Yamato down south and there's a Moskva down south, and I have no idea where they are, that would be insanely risky. So instead I just angle away and just sail straight away from him. So basically I'm gonna make him waste that smoke, because I think I was the only real viable target he had to shoot at, and yeah, there's no reason for me to go and fight him because there's bigger issues to deal with right here. And of course, when you angle like I do, you saw how much the damage dropped. He actually did a huge chunk of damage to me to start with. He did like 20k damage, which is of course the Minotaur's bread and butter, that massive AP damage on the broadside. But as soon as I angled and started sailing away, the damage dropped to not that big of a deal, and I'm pretty confident I'm out of range. Switching to AP, because of course Kurfürst, like any German battleship, if they give broadside, you can do significant damage. His hull is still too angled, so he's getting bounces, so I switched to aiming at his superstructure instead. And because regardless of angling, you can still do good damage to superstructure hits. What is actually going on there? I'm surprised our Tirpitz didn't just ram this guy. Keeping myself angled against the Bismarck, the Hindenburg, and him, of course. I don't feel like being absolutely deleted here. Oh, he really needs to die. Oh, close quarters. Well, that's not something you see every day. A Moskva getting close quarters experts against a Kurfürst. That feels a bit backwards, but I'll take it. Next threat, I consider the Hindenburg. Bismarck gets killed. That's fantastic for me. Focusing on the Hindenburg next. He's actually angling, but I don't see him. Yeah, he gets destroyed anyway because at this point he was surrounded, and oh, here's what I was talking about. The Moskva was down there. That's why I was afraid to push down into that Minotaur, and I chose the safe option of just disengaging. Now I really want to turn around here and angle against him because I'm afraid, if you see there's a landmass in front of me, and turning to the left here is very risky because it gives broadside. So I'm just going to shoot a bunch of HE at this Moskva, hoping to get him to switch to HE as well. So when I finally decide to make this left turn, he'll hopefully not have AP loaded anymore. Bouncing his AP. Okay, time to make the turn. This is a bit of a gamble. I wouldn't do this unless we were in the lead. But it's a bit of a psychological warfare there. Basically, if you angle against enemy AP and you shoot oh, he switched to HE. Basically what happened there is when you angle against enemy AP and you shoot HE back, your enemy realizes they are doing 0 damage to you, but they are taking consistent damage. So they make the logical assumption, wow, my ammo type must be wrong, so I need to switch. And that's exactly what happened there. So I shot HE at him to make him switch to HE as well, which made turning around significantly safer. It was a big gamble, of course, and not something I recommend because it could have gone wrong as well, but it was ultimately worth it. Now I'm angled, of course. The Minotaur isn't that big of a deal if I'm angled against him. He can still do some consistent damage, but as long as I keep my angle, he's not that big of a threat. He can, however, angle against my shells. So I'm trying to get his broadside, which is when I can punish him heavily. I have one fire, but I'm in no hurry to repair it. There's only one source of fires against me right now, and that is, of course, the Moskva. So until the Moskva is dealt with, I'm waiting for my reload. I have, of course, radar ready. Okay, my reload is done, and that's when I put my radar. So spotting the Minotaur, who was hoping to smoke up against my fleet, and citadeling him as well. Now I'm gonna switch to the Moskva because I think the Minotaur is fucked. Okay, Moskva already gets dealt with. Now I pop my repair because the source of fires is gone, so now I don't worry anymore. Now I speed up and start angling towards the Minotaur. I still keep my constant angling. I got my guns ready and loaded, but I'm gonna wait. I'm hoping I'm gonna turn left actually. I'm gonna bait him a bit here. Maybe if he sees me broadsiding, he's gonna switch to me. I only have 4k HP, so he might consider me an easy kill. Oh, he's giving me that broadside. Yeah, he's switching his guns to me, but I'm already turning into angle against him, and I'm finally getting those juicy citadels. And there we go. 4 citadels on him, I think. And of my 4k HP, he actually only shaved away 1.5 because I was angled. And that's, of course, I baited it in by showing the broadside, making him think I would be an easy kill to finish. And that, of course, cost him quite heavily because he gave me access to his citadel, whereas I angled against him and nullified it. And that's kind of what I've been saying lately when I've been making my Minotaur commentaries, is of course that a Moskva is a massive threat to the Minotaur in multiple ways, and a well-played Moskva will always defeat a Minotaur, as long as it doesn't just straight up potato it. But it's honestly, it's hard to lose in a Moskva versus Minotaur fight because you have all the cards, all the deck is entirely in your favor. Now, for those that didn't realize what I did there, I stopped shooting, so I got undetected, and then I turned away, and then as my turn was completing, that's when I opened fire and got detected again and started firing on the Yamato. Of course, using HE since it's angled so heavily, hoping to get these fires, but RNG doesn't seem exactly to be in my favor today. In fact, RNG seems to be hating me here. Come on, game. Oh well, the game ends. And looking at my score, well, 204,000 damage is of course always very satisfying. Dreadnought, which is not that uncommon in this ship, considering how tanky it is. And of course a nice chunk of XP. Looking at the base XP, I managed to top the scores, which, considering I didn't really get a single cap or defend a single cap, is of course always satisfying. This was a very T10 packed game, as you can see. The majority of both teams were made up of T10 ships, which of course makes it all the more satisfying. Looking at the damage though is kind of interesting, because you can see how much, even though you might not have noticed all the damage I did to the curve first, looking at this screen here, you can see just how much I did to that poor guy. 82,000 damage just to him. In fact, I was fairly close to Witherer as well, which is something you can get quite often, especially if you end up shooting a lot of T10 battleships in a game. Moskva Witherer is not uncommon by any means. Anyway, this was my revisit to the Moskva, and I hope you guys enjoyed it.